Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be looking at adding details to magazine images to make them look a little bit more interesting. I'm starting off my large Dina Wakley journal and going to go and create a background. So I'm starting off for a change actually using some gesso in the background. I just want to have a more subtle pastel-y type background. So I started off with some gesso. While it was still wet, I added in some rouge to make these pretty print colours. Now I'm not blending it all perfectly. I want it to be a bit patchy, just so I can get a little bit of interest in the background. I then used my Stabilo oil pencil just to draw into the background because, again, a bit more texture, a bit more interest. Why have something plain when you can draw into it? When I finish that, I'm then going to layer up some stenciling. So this is a stencil, I think it's called Sugar Lumps from Natalie May. And I thought it looked a bit fun just to sort of put lines in the background. So I'm just sort of extending them over the page using the pink to create a little bit of interest. When I finish that, I'm going to dry it off and then add another layer. So this is using a little bit of syrup. And I'm just watering it down so I get sort of this glazed look over the background, I suppose. And then wiping it away to do a sort of bit of a ghosted technique in the background. Once I finish that, I'm drying it off again. I didn't dry all of it off, so I could wipe a little bit away. It had a little bit of a harsh outline, so I'm just using my wet wipe just to soften the edges somewhat. Then I've got some of my gloss spray in fuchsia, I think, to splatter ink over the background. So at this stage I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing. I was just playing around with stuff that was in my craft avalanche sitting around me. I had some of those stencils out, had some of the paint sitting there. It was just like, oh, let's grab this, let's try this. It is kind of being kept in the same colour scheme though, which I quite liked. Now these are 2 pages from a magazine called Womankind. I think it's because I've used this magazine to death. It's volume 31, I think. I'll put the details in the description box below. But they're just some magnificent pictures, and the fact that I love them because they're big images that fill up the page. So they're perfect for this large Dilutions journal. And they're just really interesting artworks, which I love. So I chose this one. I had the 2 that you saw me pull out because the colours kind of worked with what I've got. So that syrupy colour works with the colours on her belt and collar. The pinks obviously with the background, with the skirt, sorry, worked really well. So one thing that I did want to do though is, obviously because she was sitting on a chair, I needed some sort of ground in here just to make sure that it wasn't floating in midair. So I used some yellow and created this sort of cobblestoney effect down the bottom. Now you can see through with all the other different bits and pieces that are there. That's okay. I've decided to fill in some of the little cobblestones with a little bit of orange, again thinking of colours that sort of came up in the background of that image as well. So you're getting this sort of really cool effect. With the choosing the colour scheme, quite often on my pages I notice the colours do tend to blend together. So this is what I suppose you would call an analogous colour scheme. You've got the yellows, oranges and pinks. They sit next to each other on the colour wheel. So when they blend together, they match. Tonally they go together. It's a really easy way to choose colours without making browns, I suppose. So it's quite often you'll notice me use sort of greens, blues together, or yellows, reds and oranges together. A really, really simple way to remember analogous colours, I suppose, is just put warm colours together, put cool colours together. They're usually going to blend together and make a nice background of some way, shape or form. To push my image out from the background a little bit, I am using my Stabilo Oil Pencil and creating a bit of a shadowy border on my page, and the same with the floor, so it actually does look like it's a bit of a ground that she's standing on. When you're doing water-soluble pencil around magazine images or cut paper, just be aware that it may soak in. You can see I've got 1 or 2 little bubbles on my magazine image. In the close-up you'll see some of it sucked into the edge of my page. That's okay. That happens when you do stuff like this, but if you don't want that to happen, you might want to think about what you're using to shadow your piece with, so whether you use a crayon or something like that instead. Now I'm going in and writing a quote on my page. So I really like this one about you're the artist of your own life. Don't hand the paintbrush to anyone else. I just had to work out what I'd actually written there. So I really love that quote. And I thought she looked very artistic here on the page. I'm adding in the little closed in letters some pink, just to pick up some of that pink happening in the background. The letters are quite long and skinny, but you'll notice I've actually, paintbrush was never going to fit in there unless I split it into 2 words, so I've just written over the image, and that's okay. Quite often with things like this, the quote for me is more important than the image itself. So I'm quite happy to incorporate the quote over the top of the image. Once I've finished, I'm going in with my white pen to put a bit of a shadow or a highlight, however you want to call it, on the page, on the letters, so they push out from the background. It gives you that layered effect really, really easily and shows what's in the foreground, what's in the background pretty quickly. While I had the white pen in my hand, I decided that I was going to add some detail to the magazine image, which I suppose is what this image video is all about. And unfortunately it's a little bit difficult to see with the shine on the page, but I'm just going over, there are some flowers on the page, and just with really, really scribbly lines, I am drawing over those flowers. I am drawing over some of the lines, so you can see the gathers in her skirt. I am going around the outskirt, outside of her hands, and putting in the details of the vest that she's got, or the collar, putting in some details on the chair as well. So they're really scratchy, fine lines, but in the finished piece, it makes such a huge difference overall to the piece. It helps define the image somewhat, puts sort of some focus on what's, the unusual quirky bits in it. It gives some extra details that possibly would have been hidden away, and you can see that in the close-up now, sort of with her hair and so on. Just by having that little bit of white over the top, just really makes that image pop out from the background. Those reds really pop, her shoes, everything. So don't be afraid to add extra detail over the back, and it can be as simple as just a white pen or a black pen and drawing in over the edges of what you've already got there. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.